October 2nd, 2006, a perfect autumn morning in many eyes. In the rolling hills of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, children's voices drift across farmland where horse-drawn buggies move along narrow roads. At the West Nichols Mine School, 26 Amish children arrive for another day of learning. Now, West Nickel Mine School is a one-room white schoolhouse that was built in 1976. On the blackboard inside, there's a sign with a teddy bear that reads, "Visitors bubble up our days." And by noon, sadly, that simple schoolhouse would become a crime scene. And by that evening, the world would witness something that defies human nature, something that will change everything we think we know about forgiveness. Charles Carl Roberts IV was someone that the community knew, a 32-year-old milk truck driver. He delivered to many of the same Amish families for years, including farms belonging to some of the victims' families. He had a wife, 3 children, and by all accounts seemed like an ordinary neighbor. If you saw him across the street, he seemed normal. But that morning, after kissing his children goodbye at the bus stop and seeing his wife off to a prayer meeting, Roberts loaded his truck with lumber, chains, guns, and other supplies that revealed his dark intention. He was preparing for a long standoff. At 10:25 a.m., he walked into the schoolhouse. Some of the school kids recognized him. It was the milk truck guy. There were 4 adult visitors that day alongside the teacher and students. When the young teacher saw his weapons, she and her mother ran to a nearby farmhouse to call 911. Roberts ordered all the boys, the adult visitors, and a pregnant woman to leave. 15 boys huddled near the outhouse, praying for the 10 girls who remained inside, ages 6 to 13. He made them lie face down towards the blackboard and bound their hands and feet. According to witnesses, Roberts told them that he was sorry for what he was about to do, but said that he was angry at God and needed to punish some Christian girls to get even with him. 9 years earlier, Roberts' first child, a baby girl named Elise, had lived only 20 minutes after birth. He'd never forgiven God for that loss. Now, in his troubled mind, innocent Amish children would pay the price for his unresolved grief and anger. At 11:07 a.m., as state troopers surrounded the school, Roberts sadly began shooting. When officers finally entered, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. Roberts had taken his own life, and 10 girls had been shot, execution style. 3 passed away at the scene, and 2 more passed away at the hospital the next day. In 2024, 18 years later, Rosanna King, who was just 6 at the time of the shooting, also succumbed to her injuries. 5 other girls survived with life-altering wounds. Some would never walk independently ever again. To understand what happened next, we need to remember 2006. School shootings weren't yet the tragically regular occurrence that they've become today across many United States schools. This was before Virginia Tech, before Sandy Hook, before Parkland. Columbine in 1999 still haunted America's consciousness. When violence entered schools, it shocked Americans more deeply than perhaps it does today, which itself is a sobering commentary on how society and people have changed. The 24-hour news cycle was just maturing. Cable news and early social media meant information spread rapidly. Within hours, over 50 television crews descended on this quiet community that intentionally avoided modern technology and publicity. The Amish, known for their distinctive dress, horse-drawn buggies, and separation from the society, suddenly found themselves thrust into the global spotlight, and what the world witnessed in those next hours would eclipse even the horror of the shooting itself. The blood was barely dry on the schoolhouse floor when Amish parents sent words of forgiveness to the killer's family. Let me say that again. Forgiveness. Not next week, not next year, not after months of therapy and counseling, not after a process of healing, almost immediately. On the very day of the shooting, an Amish neighbor went to Robert's home, wrapped his arms around Robert's dad and held him, reportedly for as long as an hour, just to comfort him. An Amish grandfather was heard telling young relatives who must not think evil of this man. Another father noted he had a mother and a wife and a soul, and now he's standing before a just God. When Roberts' funeral was held 3 days later, approximately half of the mourners were Amish, including families who had buried their own daughters just the day before. They hugged Roberts' widow, embraced the family, and offered support. The Amish community established 2 funds, one for the Wounded Children's Medical Care, which raised over $4.3 million, and another fund administered by the Amish themselves for Roberts' widow and their 3 kids. Within a week, Amish forgiveness was featured in over 2,400 news stories worldwide. The Washington Post, New York Times, NBC, Oprah, everyone wanted to understand how. How could they forgive so quickly? How? Make it make sense. Here's what the watching world did not understand initially. For the Amish, this was not an extraordinary act. It was simply their faith in action. The Amish traced their roots to the Anabaptist movement of 16th century Europe during the Protestant Reformation. Their ancestors were persecuted brutally, burnt at the stake, drowned, tortured by both Catholics and Protestants who saw them as too radical. They believed in adult baptism, religious freedom, and radical nonviolence. These early Anabaptists did not just talk about loving their enemies, they lived it even as they died for it. Every Amish child grows up hearing the story of Doug Willems. In 1569, this Dutch Anabaptist escaped from prison across a frozen pond with a guard chasing him. The guard fell through the ice and was drowning. Willems had his freedom in his grasp, but he turned back and saved the guard's life. That same guard later arrested him again. Willems was later burned at the stake while singing hymns praising God. The Amish children sing hymns from the husband, their 16th century hymnal written by martyrs in prison. They read from the Martyr's Mirror, a massive book documenting hundreds of their spiritual ancestors who forgave their tormentors even as they faced execution. Now, this isn't just history to them, it's their family story, sort of their spiritual DNA. When the Amish recite the Lord's Prayer, they pay special attention to the words that Jesus taught. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. They believe that it's not optional. You cannot claim God's forgiveness if you withhold it from others. As one Amish leader explained, if we do not forgive, how can we expect to be forgiven? But let's be clear about something crucial. This was not easy or painless. The Amish aren't superhuman. Jonas Baylor, an Amish-raised counselor called to help the community, emphasized that the Amish families were like any parents would weep. Their hearts were shattered. The pain was sharp, searing the hearts of Amish mothers and fathers like it would do to any other parent. Forgiveness in Amish theology is a decision of the will, not a feeling. It's choosing not to seek vengeance. It's the first step towards a future that isn't consumed by hatred. One mother struggled deeply. She forgave because her faith demanded it, but the grief was overwhelming. The community walked alongside her. They talked about finding the new normal, making space for both grace and grief to coexist. Donald Crable, the sociologist who co-authored Amish Grace, How Forgiveness Transcended Tragedy, explained that Amish forgiveness is communal, not just individual. They practice it together. It is reinforced through their sermons, their hymns, their daily interactions. They're trained in forgiveness the way athletes train for competition, through constant practice and discipline. 10 days after the shooting, in the pre-dawn hours to avoid traffic, the Amish demolished the West Nichols Mine Schoolhouse. They did not want it to become a shrine or a tourist attraction. The building was torn down, the debris hauled away, and the ground leveled and seeded. From pasture it came, to pasture it returned. 6 months later, on April 2nd, 2007, the New Hope School opened on a different location nearby, on land donated by one of the victims' family. It was deliberately built to look nothing like the old school. Different materials, different layout, even different flooring. Everything designed to be as different as possible. The survivors continued with their education. Some returned to schools within months, pitching softballs and doing farm work despite ongoing medical treatments. Others faced permanent disabilities, yet the community wrapped around them, never let them face their new normal alone. Not everyone praised the Amish response. Some critics argue that the immediate forgiveness was inappropriate, that it diminished the evil that had occurred, that it was maybe naive or even hypocritical coming from a community that practices strict shunning of rule breakers within their own ranks. But these critics missed something essential. The Amish weren't denying evil. They weren't excusing what Roberts did. They were refusing to let evil have the final word. And as Craybill noted, Amish forgiveness does not undo the tragedy or pardon the wrong, but rather constitutes a first step towards a future that is more hopeful. They were choosing in the face of incomprehensible loss to break the cycle of violence and hatred. They were living out what Jesus modeled on the cross when he prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Terri Roberts, Charles Roberts' mother, wrote a book called Forgiven about her journey. She travels the world speaking about forgiveness and has developed deep, lasting friendship with Amish families, including families of the victims. She visits them regularly, and they've welcomed her with open arms. Marie Monville, Roberts' widow, who has since married, also wrote about her experience. She described receiving the Amish forgiveness as overwhelming grace when her world had collapsed. The transformation went both ways. The Amish did not just offer forgiveness, they received comfort and healing through the relationships that formed. So what do we do with this story? How does it challenge us? We live in a culture of outrage. Social media rewards immediate, intense reactions. Cancel culture thrives. We're quick to condemn, slow to forgive. We hold grudges over slights far smaller than murder. We nurse resentments over workplace conflicts, family disagreements, or even political differences. The Amish response at nickel mines stands as a prophetic witness. Not because we should suppress genuine grief or enable evil. The Amish did not do that either, but because it shows us that forgiveness is possible, even in the darkest circumstances, when it's rooted in something deeper than our feelings. Jesus did not say, "Forgive those who apologize." He did not say, "Forgive those who deserve it." He said, "Forgive." Full stop. He modeled it from the cross. The early martyrs lived it. The Amish practice it. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean there are no consequences. It doesn't mean staying in harmful situations. The Amish protect themselves. Let's not get that wrong. After the nickel mines incident, they made changes to school security, though quietly and without publicizing it. But forgiveness does mean releasing the poison of hatred. It means choosing not to let the person who hurt you continue to control your life through bitterness. It means trusting God with justice while you pursue peace. When the nickel mines community calls their experience the Amish 9/11, they're not exaggerating their pain. They're naming its magnitude. For people committed to nonviolence, this invasion of deadly evil was catastrophic. Yet through that darkness, light broke through. Not because the Amish are perfect, they were the first persons to say, "Yeah, we are not," but because they built lives on a 500-year-old foundation that holds them firm, even when everything else crumbles. The last words of 13-year-old Marian Fisher, according to her sister who survived, were to the shooter. She said, "Shoot me first." She was trying to buy time for the younger girls, and that is courage. The Amish response in the hours afterwards, that was grace. Both came from the same source, a faith that believes love is stronger than hate, that forgiveness is more powerful than vengeance, and that even in the valley of the shadow of death, God's light still shines. The New Hope School stands as a testament to that belief. Where evil tried to end life and joy, hope sprouted again. That's the gospel lived out. That's what it looks like when a community truly believes that God's grace is sufficient, even especially in our deepest pain. So, I'll leave you with this question. What grudge are you holding that suddenly seems smaller in light of the story? What forgiveness have you been withholding? Who do you need to release? The Amish will tell you, forgiveness does not mean the pain goes away. It does not erase what happened, but it does mean you are not carrying that burden alone anymore. You're placing it in God's hands and choosing to walk forward into hope rather than backward into bitterness. And that's the Amish Grace. And by God's power, it's available to every one of us. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.